My name is Scott Sands. Bishop Joseph Kopacz from the Diocese of Jackson is joining me now. The conclave set to begin Wednesday. Bishop, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on. Even though I'm a lapsed Catholic, I admit it, every time I talk to Bishop Thomas here in the diocese I'm in, I always feel the need to say, forgive me, Father. It's been a long time since my last confession.
Well, in the blink of an eye, God could take care of that from eternity. So no problem.
I feel like if you have me read a few rosaries, say a few rosaries, that I'll be good to go at the end of the day.
It's a good start.
I was educated by the Jesuits at Spring Hill College in Mobile, so I'm going to rely upon that education to talk with you about the conclave set to begin Wednesday. This is really an historic event, even if you're not Catholic. This is a fascinating process to watch. This will be, I think, the fourth or fifth conclave of my lifetime, although I only remember the last couple. Let's just start by explaining what's about to take place at the Vatican.
You're right. It's an historic moment, and it captures the imagination of people who aren't Catholic and Catholics. But it is at the center of the news, certainly these days. And the conclave gathers all of the cardinals from around the world, and there are 130 who are eligible to vote in this conclave. There are those older than 80, but they cannot vote. So they come from around the world, and it's an amazing gathering because some have been cardinals for a long time, others just recently. There are blocks of cardinals who know one another, but there are those who have never met each other. And they come together and settle into what will begin on Wednesday formally, but they have been in Rome since the Pope's funeral. So they've had a chance probably to get acquainted or to, be with friends they've known for years and to begin those conversations and the prayer together and get themselves ready, for the big gathering. It's like the Super Bowl.
So since they began to gather since they met for the funeral, has there been politicking going on behind the scenes? Is it like the movie Conclave, if you've seen that?
Well, there's got to be an element of that, but I would think that a lot of it again is just the conversations that take place. Some have maybe been in school with each other 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So having a chance to really catch up and, trusting in the work of the Holy Spirit, one hopes that prayer is more central to even the conversations than politicking, but, there are naturally different blocks of cardinals who would like to see the Francis vision of the church continue. Not that was a rupture in any way, but still that more progressive vision. Others, would be of a different mindset and ecclesiology. So in that sense, there would be certainly interesting dynamics.
And you would think, and this is one of the elements of the conclave this year that make it so interesting, you would think that there's a likelihood that the policies that Francis put forth during his papacy would continue. I believe 108 of the 133 cardinals who will be voting in this conclave were appointed by Francis, which would lead you to believe, perhaps, that they will be of a similar mindset to Francis.
Yes, and that so when you're looking at that, there is definitely a vision of the church that is like Francis, deeply rooted in the needs of the modern world. But when he was elected, he was elected following Pope Benedict and Pope St. John Paul II, and they had selected the vast majority of the cardinals. So they would have been cardinals that certainly at the heart of the church, but of the vision of the church of Pope Benedict and St. John Paul, and they elected Francis. And so it's really, and again, not that Francis in any way broke from any significant traditions, but he, as we know, looked at the world and said, we need to preach the gospel in ways that the modern world can hear, and what are the needs of the modern world. And that was a surprise when you look at it. I would think you would think, well, there's going to elect the most conservative or traditional. That didn't happen, you know. So, but still, it seems the cardinals representing 90 countries, that's incredible, from around the world, will be looking at the world differently than in the past when many came
I
from
was
the the northern hemisphere or Europe.
I was going to ask about the geography involved in this conclave. It's one of the most geographically diverse conclaves that we've ever seen. I believe that Europeans make up less than 50% of the voting cardinals. Normally, you would say, and I believe that there are 2 or 3 Italian cardinals who are leading the betting, which we may get into, Bishop. But it's highly likely that we won't see an Italian cardinal elected in this conclave.
It's probable that we will not. Although, for example, Cardinal Parolin, who's the Secretary of State, is certainly prominent among the cardinals because that's such a very important ministry and position in the church. But that does not guarantee really anything. It's a broader body.
He's got 29% of the money on the.
Does he? Yeah.
Cardinal Parolin has about 29% of the money on the Kalshi betting app. If you're followed by Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines, who I think has an inside track. If my money were to go on one, and is it okay for me as a lapsed Catholic to wager on the papacy?
Well, I don't know if that's sacrilegious or not, but it's people are these days, there are odds on just about everything. So if it's a friendly wager, but you're right. When Pope Benedict was elected after Saint Pope John Paul II, one of the reasons was because so many cardinals knew him well, and he served them well when they came to Rome, and he was always really just there for them, and took care of many issues that would be present in the church. So they were, they just, when they gathered in prayer and in conference and conclave, it happened within a matter of a day or two. Pope Benedict was elected. So it's possible, again, the Italian presence in Rome could be a factor, but surprised by the Holy Spirit, we'll see. This, again, there's such diversity of representation and countries involved. 90, that's amazing.
We're talking to Bishop Joseph Kopacz from the Diocese of Jackson here on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Let's go through the process. I don't think we could expect to see a pope elected on Wednesday. How many votes will they do on a daily basis? And what do you imagine? What have you heard that sequestering process in the Sistine Chapel is like?
It's in the last century, especially. It's consistent. The Sistine Chapel is visited by countless people throughout the year, day in and day out, and so at a certain point, it's decided at that point the chapel is to be vacated. So the people leave, and I believe that's the day before, and then the cardinals gather, and in conclave, various cardinals could be asked to speak for 5 minutes or so, and not everyone will take that opportunity, but there will be a number of them who do. So they get to pray together, to listen to a particular cardinal's vision, of the church, where we need to continue to go, and so that gives cardinals a chance to settle in together, and then they vote one at a time. They come up and place their ballot in the urn, and there are three who are there to make sure it's properly placed and then count it. And a 2/3 majority is needed, so likely not on the first day, but there are two votes, likely again because you're there for 8 hours, say. So that allows time for two votes, but typically it could well happen the second or third day, because now you're honing down to a few cardinals who are gathering more and more votes. And
Right.
so if a cardinal, then at a certain point, a cardinal realizing that perhaps
Bishop, we're up against a hard break here. Would you like to stick around for our final segment? Do you have a few more minutes?
Oh, sure, no problem.
Bishop Joseph Kopacz from the Diocese of Jackson here on SuperTalk, Mississippi. I'm Scott Sands. The eyes of the world will be on the Vatican starting Wednesday as the conclave convenes to elect a new pope to replace Pope Francis. Bishop Joseph Kopacz from the Diocese of Jackson is joining us now on SuperTalk, Mississippi. It's Middays with Gerard. He'll be back tomorrow. My name is Scott Sands. Bishop, the ceremonies involved, if you've seen Conclave or any of the other numerous movies about the papacy, there's a lot of ritual involved. What is the purpose of the solemnity of these kind of ceremonies?
They are so rich in tradition, and they're maintained. Pope Francis changed a few, even the sacred robes that he wore. He simplified when he came out to be presented to the world as the next pope. So although they're not, they are traditional and they can be changed. A lot of them are maintained. Like this conclave is 800 years old. This format. So I think that's fascinating to many in the world, how that kind of tradition can keep going forward, even in light of all the changes in our modern world. When the Pope is selected, naturally the white smoke, the bells will sound. He'll be introduced. He'll have selected his name, which is very significant. Pope Francis chose Francis as following Saint Francis. So all of those parts of it, rich in symbolism and ritual.
So as of today, the leading candidates on some of the wagering apps would be Cardinal Parolin of Italy, Turkson of Ghana is getting more money on him, Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines, and Pete Zabala from Italy. Also Cardinal Zuppi from Italy. Those are the top 5 or 6 cardinals in the running. It's interesting when you look at the makeup of the College of Cardinals, because there is a conservative lean to the cardinals, but as I was mentioning earlier, more than 100 of them were appointed by Francis to the current position. So that will be the interesting political aspect of this to watch as the conclave begins.
And even within the conclave, because it's secretive, until the final announcement. Right. But within the cardinals themselves, there'll be surprises, because there'll be because so many don't know one another personally. It will be interesting to see how the Holy Spirit moves, and all of a sudden the first vote, and it's like, where did that person come from? In terms of numbers.
And do you think, Bishop, that the cardinals will be looking for a younger pontiff?
Oh, good question. Sometimes the speculation is not too young, because he's going to be there a long time. So what's the ideal age? For example, the Cardinal of Mongolia is in his 40s. I don't think he's going to be the next pope. But I think they, just by the age of most of the cardinals, is going to be someone in their 60s. Pope Francis was 74 or 5. Probably younger than that, maybe in the mid to late 60s.
Provide some stability to the church leadership
moving
forward is perhaps what they may be thinking.
I think so. Pope Francis had 12 years. That's a good long time.
Bishop, I've debated all morning whether or not to ask you if you would like to play this game. Bishop Thomas, who's become a friend of mine, will play this with me on my show here from time to time. If you're game for this, and you can say no, would you like to play a couple of questions of heavy metal lyric or Bible verse?
I'd probably be more familiar with the Bible verse.
Right. So I'll give you a line, and you tell me if you believe it's a heavy metal lyric or a Bible verse. There are no prizes. So the line is, and I will fill his mountains with his slain men, in your hills and in your valleys and in all of your rivers shall they fall that are slain with the sword.
That sounds like a few verses from the Old Testament, Bible verse.
You would be correct. That's from Ezekiel 35. One more fact, real quick. Well done.
Yeah.
Their slain shall also be cast out, and their stench shall rise up out of their corpses, and their mountains shall be melted with their blood.
Yes, indeed. That's Bible verse too.
You're correct. That's Isaiah 34. Well done.
Okay.
Bishop Kopacz, thanks for playing along. I appreciate your time, sir, and we'll be watching the conclave intently from a historic and a religious perspective starting Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Take care.
Pray for all of us. Thank you, Bishop.